Hi, I'm Ron here to introduce Whalermania. It's a fond look back at the 86-87 season, brought by the Hartford Insurance Group. We've caught all the excitement, ups and downs, the ups and downs, the brilliant moves, and some of the not-so-brilliant ones. Everything that made this a season to celebrate. For all of us, it was a year filled with great satisfaction. For individual players, the team, and we hope the fans. And it's all here for you to relive, right from the opening night face-off to the overtime in Game 6. So let's sit back, relax, and take a look at why the rest of the league has learned that the Hartford Whalers are for real. Let's roll the 86-87 video highlights.
Welcome to the world of Hartford Whalers hockey, something we call Whalermania. Whalermania, a season to celebrate, is sponsored by the Hartford Insurance Group, the insurance people of ITT. When the 1986-87 National Hockey League regular season started, the fans and media geared up for another year in the Adams Division. The always formidable conference foes, the Boston Bruins, Buffalo Sabres, Quebec Nordiques, and defending Stanley Cup champion Montreal Canadiens looked as tough as ever. No one knew what the season would be like. Were the Whalers just lucky in the 1986 Stanley Cup playoffs when they swept Adams Division champion Quebec in the opening round? Was it luck when the pesky Whalers took Montreal to overtime of the 7th and decisive game of the 1986 division finals? At the end of this regular season, it was obvious that the Whalers' third NHL Stanley Cup playoff appearance last year was no fluke. The Whalers were once again one of the league's most improved teams. This season, the team jumped from 11th place in the overall standings all the way to 4th. At the same time, the club won its first ever Adams Division Championship. In all the preseason polls, most of the so-called hockey experts picked the Whalers to finish no higher than 3rd in the Adams Division. Any questions about the potential of the 1986-87 Whalers were answered fast. The Whalers opened up the NHL regular season for the first time at home. A sellout crowd of over 15,000 anxious fans were on hand to see veteran defenseman Joel Quenneville score a game-winning shorthanded goal to beat the 1986 Stanley Cup finalists, the Calgary Flames. And the season was underway. For the first time in the Whalers' NHL history, they contended for first place in the black and blue Adams Division from the start of the season, all the way through the last regular season game. The team took first place in the Adams Division just before the All-Star break, and virtually never relinquished it. Along with the Whalers' success against Adams Division opponents, the most important element of the club's success was their ability to win at home. By the end of November, the team had moved ahead of the Boston Bruins and into third place in the Adams Division. On November 29th, the Whalers faced the biggest challenge of their young season when they traveled to the Montreal Forum to play the defending Stanley Cup champions. Then it happened.
Robertson dropped the gloves. Torrey involved in his second scuffle of the night. He went pretty well with the left against Nyland. We'll see who scores the takedown here. Corson comes back with a right hand.
During the second period fight with the Canadian Shane Corson, tough man Torrey Robertson suffered a severely broken leg, and the Whalers lost him for the season.
And Torrey now trying to be helped up here. Ronnie Francis and Mike Miller will help. And they're trying to keep the weight off his left leg as he'll be helped off to the dressing room.
However, losing Robertson spurred the team on to rally from a 5-3 deficit, scoring 4 third-period goals to win. Final score, Whalers 7, Montreal 5.
It bounces to Anderson. Denis shot, he scores! His shot deflects. There's a skate in front. Anderson, or pardon me, Lawless trying for another one. Gavin in front shoots a save. Lawless scores! Lawless scores at 34 seconds. 2 goals in 15 seconds to tie the game. Whalers control the draw. Babbage gives it to Anderson. He'll take the shot. They score! Denis tipped it in. And the Whalers are in front 6-5. And Babbage steals the pass. Quickly ahead to Denis. 2-on-1 with Anderson. Reed is back. Denis shoots. Scores! 7-5.
What a comeback. What a great shot by Kevin Denis.
Through the early going of the 80-game regular season, excitement was the trademark. The Whalers managed to win big, game after game.
Keeps it in for Francis. Ricard over skates it. Then he fires in front, and Anderson couldn't put it on. Francis scores! 2 seconds to go!
In mid-December, the Whalers took sole possession of first place in the Adams Division, despite injuries to Robertson and defenseman Joel Quenneville. Quenneville, who's one of the NHL's steadiest defensemen, was checked hard into the boards by Boston's Cam Neely, putting him out of action until March. The Whalers also were playing without high-scoring Sylvain Turgeon, but they were contending for first place, and they kept on winning. In December, one Whalers player provided not only a Whaler highlight, but gave the National Hockey League and the sport of hockey a sensational highlight that may not ever be equaled. When Doug Jarvis stepped on the ice on December 26th to play against his former Montreal Canadian teammates, he broke the most consecutive NHL games record. Jarvis played his 915th consecutive NHL game, eclipsing Gary Unger's old record.
I certainly feel very honored to be here tonight, and there are a few people that I'd like to thank, and I'm just glad that my parents were able to be here to see this event. They were at the first game, and they've really been through me with much encouragement and support, as has my wife and family through it all.
In playing his 915th straight game, Jarvis became the NHL's true Iron Man, a tribute to his intelligence and durability as an athlete, but more importantly, a tribute to his character, a small man playing the most physically demanding sport and playing it for 12 straight seasons with dedication, perseverance, and sportsmanship.
Jarvis, soon to be hockey's Iron Man.
No one could be more exciting than one of the team's flashiest players, Paul Lawless. In January, while the lead for first place in the Adams Division seesawed back and forth between the Whalers and Canadians, Lawless outskated the entire Toronto Maple Leafs team in scoring a Whalers record 6 points in one game. On his record-setting night, Lawless registered 2 goals and assisted on 4 others, as he and his line mates Stu Gavin and Dean Evison combined for an unbelievable 14 points. After the Whalers dropped to second place in the division, prospects looked even more foreboding, as they were faced with playing a 2-game series against the Canadians. The Montreal Forum looked especially bleak, but the Whalers responded by unexpectedly taking Montreal into overtime, when Captain Ron Francis snapped the Whalers' short slump. When the Canadians returned to Hartford 2 days later, the Whalers looked like a different team, and the mini-series belonged to the Whalers. Heading into the second half of the 80-game season, last year's Adams champions, the Quebec Nordiques, were battling the Buffalo Sabres for 4th place in the division. The Boston Bruins were in 3rd place, and the Whalers and Montreal Canadiens kept flipping back and forth in 1st and 2nd. Turgeon's return had an immediate impact. For years, the Whalers found winning in the small Boston Garden quite difficult. But with Turgeon on the same line as Dean Evison and Stu Gavin, things were different. On January 29th, Turgeon, Evison, and Gavin combined to score 5 of the club's 6 goals, and the Whalers won again in Boston 6-5. However, the game was not decided until Turgeon notched his 2nd goal of the game, snapping a 3-3 tie with only 4 minutes to play. The victory put the Whalers back into 1st place in the Adams Division, but was also an important milestone. The win was goaltender Mike Liut's 200th career NHL victory, placing him in the top 5 of the league's active netminders for career victories. When the Whalers returned to the Hartford Civic Center February 7th, the sellout crowd saw an action-packed defensive game for 1st place in the division, and it looked like playoff hockey. The Whalers won 3-2, propelled by second-period goals from Turgeon and Evison. The game proved that the Whalers were going to contend for first, and Whalermania started to spread. Before the 1986-87 season, the Whalers had never been on top of their division after October. But now it was February, and they were contending for the Adams Division crown. The end of February and the first week of March brought the Whalers a 6-game homestand. The 6 games included 2 against Boston and 1 with the Quebec Nordiques and the powerhouse Philadelphia Flyers. In the first Boston game, Cam Neely scored just 20 seconds into the game to give the Bruins an early lead. Center Ray Ferraro evened the score and then put the Whalers up 2-1 with his 2nd power play goal. The Bruins responded to tie it, but then the Whalers' goal scorers took over. Sylvain Turgeon, Kevin Dineen, Paul Lawless, who scored twice, and the Whalers beat Boston for the 5th time in 6 tries. The Whalers then went on to post a win against the Quebec Nordiques, which was the 500th victory in the club's 15-year history. The club's first win came on October 12, 1972, when the Whalers won their first World Hockey Association game 4-3 against the Philadelphia Blazers. The Whalers won the WHA's Eastern Division that season, and now, ironically, a decade and a half later, the club posted a milestone 500th win to help solidify their first-place lead in the Adams Division. Next, the Whalers tied the New Jersey Devils and beat the Detroit Red Wings. And then Boston came back for their last game of the season against the Whalers. There was no question about this game. When the smoke cleared, the Whalers had scored 10 goals and allowed only 2 in handing the Bruins their most decisive defeat of the last 20 Boston seasons. The game was a flurry of Whalers' offensive firepower as the team took a 6-0 lead when Sylvain Turgeon and Kevin Dineen each scored twice, and then Stu Gavin and Dean Evison notched lone tallies. Paul Lawless became the third Whaler to score 2 goals in the game, and Ray Ferraro and John Anderson rounded out the Blitz with 1 goal apiece. The win meant the Whalers had won their season series against the Bruins for the first time in the club's history, and it was by a resounding margin of 6 games to 2. 2 nights later, the Whalers hosted the Philadelphia Flyers for the last contest of the 6-game homestand. The win capped the most successful homestand in the Whalers' NHL history, as the team logged in with 5 wins, no losses, and just 1 tie in grabbing 11 out of 12 possible points. Just as important, the Whalers increased their divisional lead to 8 points over Montreal. And even more important, it set the stage for a March 13th game against the Winnipeg Jets, a game where, if victorious, the Whalers could mathematically clinch their 2nd consecutive NHL Stanley Cup playoff berth.
Young stars were now becoming established in Hartford, and slowly other NHL rivals started to pay special attention to the new guys on the block.
Kevin Dineen, Ulf Samuelsson, and Dana Merzen.
Kevin Dineen carried an unmatched intensity into every Whalers game. A throwback to the golden age of hockey, Dineen scrapped and hustled for each of his goals. And his style and ability to come up with the clutch goals earned him a spot on the 1987 NHL All-Star team.
Swedish defenseman Ulf Samuelsson also represented the Whalers at the 1987 NHL All-Star Games against the Soviets. Rendezvous 87 in Quebec City.
Samuelsson provided strong hockey skills and enthusiasm, and with big, strong Dana Merzen, created one of the most able young defensive pairs in the NHL. The Whalers also won with toughness. The club managed to play .500 hockey in the most grueling portion of the schedule. With 20 games and only 37 nights, late December and all of January was especially tiring. 14 of the 20 games were played on the road. But the Whalers battled through. Newly acquired forward Dave Semenko, defenseman Scott Kleinendorst, and rookie Shane Churla provided the punch. Right-winger Paul McDermott's cascade hits were called avalanche checks by his teammates. all the flash and toughness, the Whalers still had to rely on the consistency of veterans John Anderson and Ron Francis, both seasoned forwards with a commitment to excellence. Ron Francis set the Whalers' record for most assists in a single game, when 6 of his pinpoint passes led to Whalers goals. Francis's 6 points capped his 12-point week and earned him the honor NHL Player of the Week.
The puck away from Beach. McDermott cutting in across. They score! Francis tucks it home.
Waited his time, but the goaltender was...
And Steffen equal to the task. They score! Ronnie Francis jams it in on the 3rd try. This time can't get around Sorella. Deneen picks it up back to Francis. Ronnie scores! Francis is 150th career goal to Deneen. Evason shooting. Saved by Level and they score! John Anderson jams in the rebound. Samuelson will drive and it's deflected just by Wilson. There they score! John Anderson tucks it home.
When General Manager Emile Francis arrived in Hartford in 1983, the Cat traded or cut everyone except Ron Francis. By 1986, the results were obvious. And in 1987, the rebuilding process neared completion. The year before Francis arrived, Hartford finished 20th out of 21 NHL teams. Then Francis and head coach Jack Evans came in, and the team improved steadily, with the 1986 Whalers advancing further than any Whalers team ever in the NHL playoffs. Two of those key trades created the goaltending tandem of Mike Liut and Steve Weeks. The team relied heavily on the duo, and they came through like never before.
Start off, here's McCart blasting one, saved by Liut, and he just Zezel cuts in, saved by Weeks. He didn't know where the rebound was. Barr's pass swept away by Crossman. Mellanby slips it into Sutter. Back to Mellanby. Saved by Weeks.
High-scoring Sylvain Turgeon, who had returned from a nagging stomach injury that kept him out of the Whalers' first 39 games, showed his talent as the Whalers continued their quest for a first-place finish in the division. Turgeon had only one speed, and it was fast, extremely fast.
Turgeon shoots, scores! Turgeon with a shot. Ferraro was looking to tip it in. In any case, it's 1-0 Hartford. Whalers were checking pretty well here in the first 5 minutes. Gavin will send the Bruins back. Samuelson races it. Evanson's alone. He sets it up. They score! Sylvain Turgeon makes it 2-0.
This one way, Rick. A beauty. This was a beauty.
This pass and hit Diddick. And the Whalers speed in. Turgeon scores! Turgeon picked it up behind the net and stuffed it home.
The Whalers also showed exactly what it takes to become a Major League hockey player. Luckily, things settled down, and the Whalers clinched an NHL Stanley Cup playoff berth earlier than ever before, with a victory over the Winnipeg Jets on March 13th. On April 4th, the Whalers faced the New York Rangers to battle for the regular season Adams Division Championship. A victory would mean the Whalers would win the division for the first time since joining the NHL.
The Whalers' third Stanley Cup playoff appearance was a disappointment. The 1987 Stanley Cup playoffs are something that each of the Whalers players and fans would like to forget. The series against the Quebec Nordiques was a study in penalty minutes, as both teams rewrote the NHL penalty records for a Stanley Cup playoff series. At the end of the knockdown drag-em-out series, Quebec had avenged their opening round playoff loss to the Whalers last season and beat the Whalers 4-2. All hopes were dashed in overtime of Game 6 when Peter Stastny broke loose and scored the game winner. Minute-wise, it was the longest game in Whalers history, but hours of agony during the off-season will create a hunger in each Whalers player next year. But no playoff loss could detract from the tremendous regular season and the club's accomplishments in winning the Adams Crown. The record speaks for itself. The 86-87 Hartford Whalers accomplished more than any previous Whalers team has since joining the NHL in 1979. And they brought the city of Hartford its first divisional title. The Whalers won the Adams Division Championship. Next season, when the Whalers open a new campaign, a new effort, there will be an addition to the Hartford Civic Center Coliseum. Flapping from the rafters will be a new silk banner. The banner's letters will read, Hartford Whalers, 1986-87 Adams Division Champions. But it will say a lot more. To the thousands of people who won and lost with the club, the banner will say that the Whalers were a team that worked hard for the championship. A class team showing character and playing with pride and talent to bring the Adams Championship to the great fans of Hartford. The club set all home attendance records as the regular season combined with the playoffs attendance passed 600,000 people for the first time in the club's history. The average crowd was 14,230 people, very close to capacity. Including the 3 playoff games, a total of 19 home games sold out. The strong outpouring of support from Hartford fans was called Whalermania, and the Hartford Civic Center Coliseum became a very tough arena for the visiting NHL teams. And when that championship banner is unfurled in October, each Whalers fan can take pride in knowing that the home crowd made a tremendous difference between the club's winning or losing. And when the next NHL season starts, the Whalers will be the team to catch in the Adams Division, the defending champions. The Whalers won more games at home than ever before and finished the year with the National Hockey League's 4th best record. Only the Edmonton Oilers, Philadelphia Flyers, and Calgary Flames won more games. In fact, the Whalers are the only National Hockey League team to have improved over each of the last 4 seasons. It is no coincidence that the 4-year improvement started with the arrival of President and General Manager Emile Francis and head coach Jack Evans. In 1982-83, the Whalers' overall NHL finish ranked them in a tie for 20th in the 21-team league. In the successive seasons, the Whalers climbed to 17th overall, then 14th, followed by 11th, to this year's finish of the 4th best team in the NHL over the 80-game regular season schedule. To many, this is a remarkable accomplishment. But when you look over the last 5 seasons, you can see the steady improvement and the club's commitment to becoming the best. In reviewing the 1986-87 Adams Division champions, the character came from a mix of youth and experience. The club was led by Captain Ron Francis, who enjoyed his finest season. The Whalers center scored 93 points, the most of any Whaler in 1986-87, and the most that he has scored in one NHL season. Francis, as captain, was the glue between the young players and the established veterans. He always showed class in both victory and defeat. And most important, Ron Francis is only 24 years old. Whalers right wing Kevin Dineen also enjoyed his finest season as he led the club in goal scoring, notching 40 goals for the first time in his career. Dineen was at his best in clutch situations as the Whalers won 77% of the games Dineen scored in, but only 48% when Dineen was scoreless. Dineen was named the Whalers American Express Man of the Year for his commitment to help various charities in the Hartford area, and was voted the Connecticut National Bank favorite Whaler by the fans. The award symbolized just how valuable Dineen is to the Hartford area, and his feats on the ice were a testament to his value to the team. Overall, the team had balanced scoring, as 8 players had 20 or more goals. In fact, 7 Whalers enjoyed their best ever NHL seasons. Offensively, Ron Francis, Kevin Dineen, Paul Lawless, and Dean Evison had their best years. On the defense, it was Ulf Samuelsson, Dana Merzen, and Scott Kleinendorst. Mike Liut was the showstopper. He led the league in shutouts and, along with Steve Weeks, consistently provided the Whalers a boost with his strong goaltending. Liut was voted the Whalers Booster Club MVP, and, in a vote of his teammates, the player's most valuable player. Liut won his 200th NHL game when the Whalers beat the Bruins 6-3 in Boston on January 29th. No divisional championship team would be complete without strong goaltending, and Mike Liut and Steve Weeks provided it. If the NHL schedule was changed to 12 months of hockey, the first player to sign up would be Ulf Samuelsson. Full of youthful exuberance that stems from his love for the game, Samuelsson played each game like it was his last. He led the team with a +29, which meant he was usually on the ice when the Whalers scored. Samuelsson won the Budweiser Most Valuable Whalers Defenseman, and along with Dineen, was selected to the 1987 NHL All-Star Team. Only Philadelphia and Montreal allowed fewer goals than the Whalers in 1986-87. The Whalers' defense is young, and that youth should translate into a defensive nucleus of the future teams. At the end of the season, the defensemen's ages were Sylvain Coty, 21, Ulf Samuelsson, 23, Scott Kleinendorst, 27, Randy Ladouceur and Dave Babich, 26, and Dana Merzen, as the youngest, at only 20 years old. Providing experience on defense were Joel Quenneville, a hard-working, steady defenseman, and Mike McEwen, whose booming slap shot is among the league's best. Despite injuries, Sylvain Turgeon and Paul Lawless had fine years. Turgeon came back after missing almost half the season to average nearly a point per game. Like Turgeon, Lawless averaged close to a point per game with 54 points in only 60 games for his best season ever. Forward John Anderson led the team in scoring goals that put the Whalers ahead. He scored 3 first goals and 9 tiebreakers amongst his 31 goals. Anderson also notched 81 points on the way to becoming a 30-goal scorer for the 5th time in 6 years. Dean Evison, another young center, was named the Whalers' unsung hero. His 59 points were also a career high, and he was one of only 4 Whalers to play in all 80 games. Helping Ron Francis in the leadership department was Dave Tippett, a 4-year veteran who has not missed an NHL game since joining the club after the 1984 Olympics. Tippett excelled when the Whalers were in penalty-killing situations and led the club with 3 shorthanded goals, only 1 shy of the team's record. Center Ray Ferraro led the team in power play goals with 14 and had a total of 27 goals. Stu Gavin, a right winger, had his second consecutive 20-goal season and led the Whalers in scoring during the playoffs with 6 points in as many games. At the end of the season, Ironman Doug Jarvis had logged 962 consecutive NHL games. It came as no surprise when Jarvis won the league's Bill Masterton Memorial Trophy. Doug Jarvis personifies the purpose of the Masterton Trophy: perseverance, dedication to hockey, and sportsmanship. The players who made 1986-87 a season to celebrate, and the thousands of fans who created Whalermania will be back next year. And they'll be eager to see if the club can repeat as Adams Division champions and advance even further toward the pinnacle, the Stanley Cup Championship.
When you end up 4th overall over an 80-game schedule, that is a very tough chore. A playoff series, you play 4 out of 7. You can win or you can lose in 7 games. But when you have a good enough hockey club to end up where we did over 80 games, that tells you that you have a good team. It takes a lot of character to sustain that. Now what we've got to do is put our minds to the task of performing and winning in the playoffs. And we know when you're good enough over 80, you are sure good enough over 7 or 14 or 27, whatever it takes to win.
I hope you enjoyed this look back at the season as much as I did, although there could have been a little more of me in there. And thanks again to the Hartford for sponsoring Whalermania. We'll see you next year when we present a brand new edition. More Whalermania, or was it Whalermania 2, or Son of Whalermania, or maybe Francis Mania. Yeah, that's it, Francis Mania.
Hey, what about Ferraro Mania?
No, I got it. Shoot at you.
What rhymes with Kleinendorf?
Okay.
No, I like rip it with tip it.
Oh, yeah, that's a real good one.